Right, so today's lesson is going to be a review of structural and behavioral adaptations. Now, you'll remember that we talked about these a couple of weeks ago. We went over animal, physical, and behavioral adaptations. So remember, there are lots of different habitats around the planet, and here are some pictures of a few examples of those different habitats. Each of these habitats places special demands on the organisms that live there. And because of those special demands, each organism, plant and animal, in the habitat biome have special abilities or adaptations in order to survive in that habitat. Basically, it comes down to they have to adapt or they cannot live. They can't survive. If you are alive, you have one simple goal: remain alive. In the wild, each and every action an organism takes is meant to achieve that goal of staying alive. If an organism does not adapt to fit its habitat, it will surely cease to exist. It won't exist any longer. And no organism wants that. Remember, the main goal is to stay alive. So let's look at structural adaptations first. A structural adaptation is a physical characteristic or attribute that an organism's body has that helps it meet a life need. So structural adaptations are physical things. They are characteristics or parts of the organism's body. Structural adaptations often include an organism's teeth, beak, claws, feet, body coverings, such as hair, fur, or scales, or camouflage. Those are all examples of structural adaptations. These adaptations help an organism find and eat its food, hide from predators or prey, or maintain a healthy body temperature. Each of those things are extremely helpful when it comes to staying alive. So just to elaborate a little bit more, an organism's teeth, if it's got sharp teeth and if it eats meat, it's a carnivore, it's going to have those sharp teeth because that will help it eat its food more effectively. Hiding from predators or prey, that's where camouflage comes in handy. Being able to hide from predators to keep from being eaten, or if you are a predator, being able to blend in or camouflage so that you can sneak up on your prey. And maintaining a healthy body temperature, a great example of this would be like a polar bear. They have thick layers of blubber or fat and very thick fur that help it maintain the body temperature it needs to live in that Arctic environment. So let's take a look. Where do we often find this organism? Typically, we find this duck around ponds, small bodies of water. So what adaptation does it have to help it live successfully in its habitat? Well, if we look, the most obvious is this duck's feet. It's got webbed feet meant to help it swim through the pond, on top of the pond, more specifically. So its body is meant to float on top of the water versus swim under the water. And its feathers are actually really good at kind of repelling water a little bit so that the duck's body temperature can be maintained and regulated without getting soaked. Okay, here we have another organism. Take a really, really close look and try to find it. If you haven't found it yet, the organism in question is right here. It is a stick bug. So where do we often find this organism? Typically on plants that have branches and stems, because it is meant to camouflage in and look like those leafless branches. It looks like a stick, and that's what helps it successfully survive in its habitat. All right, now we have a familiar animal, a tiger. What do you notice about this organism's teeth? Hopefully you notice that some of the teeth are fairly large and they are sharp. And how could those teeth help this tiger survive in its habitat? Well, tigers are carnivores, meaning they eat meat. And those sharp teeth help them get their prey and helps them tear through the meat so that they can eat. Those sharp teeth help them eat their food. All right, now let's look at this eagle. Look at this eagle's feet specifically. How are those feet a structural adaptation? Well, looking at this eagle's feet, hopefully you notice that it has very large talons. Those claw-like nails at the end of its feet are called talons, and they help this eagle get its food. Eagles will swoop down. A lot of times you will see videos of eagles swooping down, especially around a body of water, and grabbing a fish. Those talons help them latch onto that fish and hold on tight. Okay, here's a silly question that should make sense. Would this animal be successful with these teeth? Why or why not? Would this animal, this lion, as I'm sure you can tell that's a lion, would it be successful in eating this cow with the teeth that it has? And the answer is yes. He's got sharp teeth that will help him get his prey. All right, here's another silly question. We have a lizard there, a reptile. Remember, reptiles are cold-blooded. He's covered in scales. And then we have a picture of some fur down here. Looking at the environment that this lizard is in, would this lizard be successful with a thick layer of fur? I would say no. Looking around at the area that this lizard is in, it looks to be a very hot, dry area like a desert. Would a thick layer of fur help somebody or an organism survive in a desert? Absolutely not. It would be way too hot. Right, and just one more question, and I believe we're going to be looking at the beaks of these birds. We have a pelican and what appears to be probably a hummingbird beak. I don't like the way that this question's worded, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Think about the pelican and where it lives. They live around oceans and bodies of water, and they eat fish. So think about how the beak of this pelican is going to make it more successful in getting its prey, in getting fish to eat, versus this tiny, very pointed hummingbird beak. So our pelican's structural adaptation helps it survive because it allows the pelican to scoop water and scoop up those fish. I'm sure you've seen Finding Nemo. And we have an example there of a pelican and how they use that beak to scoop up water and scoop up fish. Hummingbirds, on the other hand, use their very, very small, thin, pointed beak to get to the nectar in flowers. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about behavioral adaptations. Sometimes it isn't just a change to an organism's body that helps it survive. Sometimes it's something that they do or a behavior. A behavioral adaptation is a certain activity that gives an organism the ability to meet a life need. Some examples are hibernation, migration, and nocturnal hunting or nighttime hunting. We see this a lot, especially at this time of the year that we are in right now, heading south for the winter. What are these geese doing? They're migrating. But why do they need to migrate? Well, they need to migrate because it is way too cold where they live in the wintertime. So they head south where it's going to be warmer. Then when it starts to get way too hot, they come back up to their original habitat. But why? Why would they do this instead of just, growing a physical adaptation to help them stay warm in the winter? Well, it's because they can't find the food that they need at home. Because of the cold weather, their food source dies out over the winter time, and they have to migrate to get food. They got to go where the food is. Another example, here we have a bear having a long winter's nap. What's he doing? There's a special word for this nap, and it is hibernation. This bear is hibernating. So why does he need to hibernate? Well, because it's cold outside, and there won't be enough food for him to make it through the winter. So, what this bear does, his behavioral adaptation, is that he fattens up during the fall. He eats a whole lot of food to gain weight, takes a very, very long snooze during the cold months, and comes back out when the food returns. Right, our next example is, why does this flying squirrel go looking for food at nighttime? Well, most of the animals that hunt this flying squirrel are active during the day. So, in order to protect himself, the flying squirrel has adjusted his behavior and become nocturnal by gathering his food at night. So why do you think this fennec fox, which lives in the desert, only comes out at night? Well, think about the desert. It's hot during the daytime. So he comes out at night to stay cool and preserve water in his body. Remember, the desert doesn't have a whole lot of water. So he comes out when it's cooler to help preserve that water. So looking at this insect, do you think this camouflage here, it looks a bit like a leaf to me, it looks like sticks. Do you think that is behavioral or structural? If you said structural, you would be correct. Okay, we have a bear here showing off its sharp teeth that it is using to catch its prey or the salmon. Are those sharp teeth behavioral or structural? They are structural again. Sharp teeth are structural. Okay, here is a little rodent type animal. I don't know the exact name of the animal, but it appears to be taking a long nap with some food stored around there. So is this long nap that this organism is taking behavioral or structural? Yep, we've switched it up. That long nap or hibernation is a behavioral adaptation. Okay. Now we have some webbed feet. Behavioral or structural? They are structural adaptations. right? Humans wearing a thick jacket in the winter time. Is that a behavior or a structural adaptation? It's a behavioral adaptation. We are adding something to our body to help keep us warm.